Productions presents Guide for the Film Fanatic, the podcast where we invite a guest to pick one movie from Danny Perry's seminal 1986 film reference book and talk to us about that movie. I'm your host, Jason Bailey. Across the mic and across the country from me is my co-host,
Michael Hull.
Our guest today, guys, is one of our very favorite film writers and podcasters whose must-read website, Formerly Dangerous, features his musings on film, culture, and the 1980s. He was previously a contributor to Ain't It Cool News and Hitfix, among others. He also wrote and narrated an episode of Netflix's Voir, and wrote episodes of Masters of Horror and Fear Itself, among others. And last but not least, he hosts the excellent podcast, The Hip Pocket Friends. Say hello to Drew McWeeny. Hi, Drew.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Thank
good
you
to be
for
here.
having us. Yeah, it's a treat. I mean, you were one of our very first guests on A Very Good Year, so we've got a nice long history. At that time, you had just hung out your shingle at Substack. You're not there now, so talk to us a little bit about the transition from of Formerly Dangerous from Substack to drewmcweeny.com.
Yeah, I moved off Substack last fall, and it was after they served everybody in my newsletter subscription list an ad for a Nazi newsletter.
Well, there it is.
And I was like, well, then perhaps we're not going to be here anymore. Thanks. And the move to Ghost was a nightmare, but it has allowed me to consolidate everything in one place, and it made it a lot easier because now I'm just at drewmcweeny.com, which... Yeah. That's it. I'm not going anywhere else. I'm not moving anymore. That's my site, and it's,
I mean, not unless you change your name. That's where you'll be.
Distinctly possible at this point. You know, maybe after I fake my death, then you'll have to come up with a new one. But no, it's been a great move. I think the people at Ghost are fantastic, and I am dedicated to remaining an independent publisher. I really don't want to go back to work for anybody. I really don't want to work for publicists. And the state of film writing right now is fairly dire. And it's not the film writer's fault. It's truly the ecosystem in which we're all trying to work is toxic and horrible. Yeah. So I do feel like a lot of the best stuff that's being done is being done by people on the fringe at this point. Like, I think The Reveal is a terrific read. There's a lot of great newsletters. There's a lot of great writers who are no longer at outlets who are simply doing their own thing. And it feels almost like we're getting back to the early days of the internet. It's just that now everything's so broken in terms of search engines that finding people is a little harder. So, you know, it's always nice when you can talk to new people who maybe don't know what you do and spread the word. So thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. Well, I am a lifetime subscriber to the website.
Nice.
So this is not an empty bullshit wax your car kind of endorsement. I read this site. I love this site. For those who are not subscribing, I mean, it's an everything but the kitchen sink sort of affair. What all are people getting when they subscribe?
Well, Formerly Dangerous, there's two newsletters that I publish. One, Formerly Dangerous, is the sort of the broader scope where I write about older films and newer films. I've been sitting out reviewing for a while, but I'm starting to get back into newer reviews. I still publish the Film Nerd 2.0 stuff, which is about how I've raised my sons as media consumers, and they are actually contributing articles now. They both have things they want to write about. Toshi just powered through all of Twin Peaks this year, and it changed his brain in some fundamental way, and he's determined to write about that process.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it boy, did it work. It was something else to watch him watch it. Yeah. And like I had him over here for Firewalk with me. I was like, I want to watch that one with you. And at the end, the moment in the movie where it cuts to the boom, boom, and you get the shot of Twin Peaks, he elevated off the couch and just glowed for like 10 minutes. He was like, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
So they're at a great age where they're starting to really be their own film fans, and they've got a voice and they really want to share it. I also publish screenplays, things that, I've written fiction-wise. The other newsletter is the Last 80s Newsletter You'll Ever Need, which is a continuation of the old 80s All Over podcast, which only got to early 85 before it imploded. I am determined to finish this whole project. I am reviewing every film from the 1980s, released theatrically in the United States, in order. The only exception to that really is 80s Roulette, which is every Monday. I have all of my movies on a Plex server. I hit shuffle on the 80s library, and whatever comes up is what I write about. And some weeks that's The Big Chill, and some weeks it's Great White. And okay, it's just whatever comes up on Monday.
Yeah. And
I mean, I have
like
children and am currently in the middle of a documentary that I've been working on for 10 years, and that gives me anxiety, just hearing you describe that process. I mean, I'm not averse to big projects, but oh my God.
Yeah. It's one of those that when if I make it, I will take about a 9-month nap afterwards. It's going to kill me. But I loved that podcast, and I love that newsletter in particular, just because, like, we're roughly the same age. I was born in 75. So these are all movies that most of which I didn't even see, but that I have such vivid memories of seeing commercials on HBO, seeing VHS boxes at the video store. And a lot of times something will come up in that newsletter that I haven't thought about since I was 8 years old when it was running on HBO or something like that. So it's a wonderful... It is an interesting thing. Yeah, how much we bond to those moments and the ephemera. Like you're saying, you remember trailers, you remember video store covers, you remember. Yep. I am the same way, and there are films that I only ever process through the ephemera. That now, as I'm going back and picking up, I'm seeing, and some of them I probably should have only experienced as ephemera. But it's truly interesting to fill in every one of those gaps, every single nook and cranny of that decade.
Yeah, and in addition to that, the way I find really inspiring as someone who wants to interject my personality into what I write, wants to interject my experiences into what I write, and I'm always a little bit afraid of, like, no, it's not about you, yada, yada. The degree to which you incorporate your autobiography into these newsletters, and in a really amazing way are kind of working through some of the shit in your childhood that you're still grappling with, makes it really poignant and powerful in a way that you might not think a roundup of 80s movie reviews would be.
It is strange because I think from when you're 10 to when you're 20 is when your movie tastes really calcify. That's when they become what they are.
Sure.
And that's that decade for me. I was 10 in 1980. I turned 20 in 1990, and it's truly the decade where I came into focus.
Yeah. And
so there's a lot of rough patches in that decade, and the only way to really write about that decade is to write about it fully. And you're right, it has become an autobiographical project as much as anything.
Yeah. Well, it's
which is weird,
read.
And definitely there's times where it's uncomfortable, and
Yeah. And then in relation to this changeover and the sort of the relaunch, the podcast started around that same time?
A little bit before. I'd been working on it, and I had the idea about a year before I recorded anything, and then I went looking for co-hosts. And my big thing was I wanted to get somebody in there who I had not already had all these conversations with.
Sure.
Who I didn't know intimately already.
Sure.
And who came at film from a really different direction than me. And when I found Andrea Parker, she had messaged me on Twitter way back and just messaged me one day and said, "You and I are going to be good friends." And I was like, okay, I like the confidence.
Absolutely.
And Andrea's one of those people, when I had everybody that I talked to pick a Hip Pocket movie to bring to me. And those are, for people who haven't heard the podcast, the Hip Pocket is the idea is we all carry Hip Pocket movies around, movies that we see and they stick to us, and then we love to share them with people, and you can't stop thinking about them, and sometimes they're good, and sometimes they're bad, and sometimes they're big, and sometimes they're small, but stuff sticks to you, and you don't know why. Yeah. And this is a show to work through that. We ask our guests to bring in 3 Hip Pocket movies, and then we pick a response film. Her Hip Pocket movie was Dinner in America, which I had not seen yet. Okay. And when I put Dinner in America on, now have you guys both seen this? Do you know what this is?
I have not. I know of it, and I've seen some of his other stuff. I haven't seen that one yet.
So it's Adam Raymeyer's breakthrough, and it's phenomenal. It's one of those little movies that came out, I think, during the COVID time, so nobody noticed it. and it just got run over. Like, it was a little indie, tiny festival thing that had no muscle behind it. And it's Kyle Gallner is the star of it. It's phenomenal. It is punk and angry and beautiful and ugly, and it does 50 different things. And as soon as I finished it, I was like, well, that's my co-host. Like, anybody that would bring that to the table. I didn't see it. I didn't know about it. And it is such a clear declaration of this is who I am and what I like. And it might not be mainstream, but this is mine and I'm going to defend it. And I was like, I want her. Yeah. So the show, just came together over time, and then we started recording it. And again, it's something I want to do completely independently. We don't have a network or anything else, and I feel like it is a show that once somebody does it, once we have a guest, they want to come back. Right. I think it's a really fun space to come and talk about movies and to really dig into why they matter to us.
Yeah, it's a terrific podcast,
which I think you guys do.
Thank you. That's what we're trying to do.
It's all about building spaces where you can hang out and have these conversations, and you can talk about movies you do and don't like, but it's not about being bitchy about it or scoring points on it. It really is about why these things stick in our heads. And there are truly disastrously terrible movies that are in my head that replay more frequently than the stuff that I love, simply because I'm fascinated. I can't imagine how they got there, and I need to know about all the choices that led them.
Well, we can tell. I can tell when we have a professional on as the guest, because only someone who hosts a show themselves can provide such a natural transition for us, as you just did. Drew McWeeny, what film from Guide from the Film Fanatic did you select to discuss today?
I picked a movie that I have been fascinated by since I saw it when it came out, and truly must think about way more than it deserves. But it is 1981's Neighbors.
In a not-too-distant suburb, on a very quiet street.
It's funny because they almost cut this like a horror movie trailer.
Mm-hmm.
This is very much a case of a studio that doesn't know what they have. They don't know how to sell it, and they're hoping star power is going to do all the work for them.
And this Twilight Zone framing, which is sort of interesting because that show was having a bit of a revival and was about to have the movie a little while later with Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I didn't even connect that. Yeah, you're right.
The question is, what do you want in return?
I just know that when this trailer played, I definitely saw it and was a fan of both of these guys at this point. And even from the trailer, the Belushi casting seemed so strange. Like, there's got to be a point here, right, where Earl just cuts loose and becomes... There's a point.
There has to be a point. I know that's not exactly how you were using that phrase, but there's got to be a point to this, right?
There's got to be a moment where he cuts loose and becomes Belushi, right? On the other hand, I do think that the movie makes, or even the trailer, makes a case that Aykroyd is doing something different. We haven't seen this Aykroyd ever. And I think that was compelling enough. While I was confused by the one, the other I thought was at least interesting, and Aykroyd so visually striking in the film as Vic that, oh boy.
They come in 4 flavors. Great idea.
That line got the movie shut off when I tried to see this with my parents for the first time. I saw this on video. And it was literally my dad sitting behind me. I'm in a beanbag watching this movie on videotape. The scene in the kitchen comes up. Vic takes out the edible panties and goes, "Hey, how about a bite of your daughter's cherry?" And my dad leapt over me and kicked the VCR. He was so mad. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm watching this after you go to bed. But, oh, wow, okay. Yeah, that was a real breaking point for my father. I didn't know that was in the trailer. That is bold, man.
Yeah, that is a case study in how to try to sell a movie that you don't know how the fuck to sell. Neighbors is director John G. Avildsen's adaptation of Thomas Berger's satirical novel. John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd star as the buttoned-up Earl and the wild man Vic. They were originally considered for the opposite roles, but during pre-production, Avildsen and producers Richard D. Zanuck and David Brown decided to let them switch roles so they could play against type. Screenplay was credited to Larry Gelbart, who started out...
So that was their idea? Whose idea was that?
Drew has actually read in on this fairly well, and I've read differing stories about whose idea it was, who sold who on it. That I'm honestly not 100% sure, just because everyone has told sort of different versions of that story.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt. More for this later.
Yeah.
The screenplay was credited to Larry Gelbart, who started out in the Your Show of Shows writer's room and was, at that time, best known for developing MASH for television. And it's kind of hard to imagine two comic sensibilities more at odds than the mind behind MASH and the stars of Saturday Night Live. Gelbart disavowed the movie, claiming it had been vastly rewritten by its stars and accusing them, by doing so, of scabbing during the WGA strikes. It was a contentious shoot in other ways as well. The stars reportedly tried to get Avildsen fired, claiming he had no understanding of comedy, which they might have had a point, and petitioning to get him replaced with their Blues Brothers director, John Landis. There was also a whole mishigas with Belushi trying to get his favorite punk band Fear to do a closing credits song or to do score. There are, again, different versions of that, which the producers in studio ultimately vetoed. Belushi got them a slot performing on SNL as a make good, and that was a whole saga of its own. All right, Mike, what does Danny Perry say about Neighbors in Guide for the Film Fanatic?
Then he says,
I'm sorry, but by the time you're calling John Belushi a scab for improving, like, you've lost the fucking plot, bro. Like, you're too deep in whatever well you live in. You know what I mean? That's wild.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. That's wild. That's not part of the review. That's just pure commentary from a co-host. Okay, Danny says, sorry. In his last film, John Belushi is a dull, ineffectual, married suburbanite whose dreary existence comes to an end when Dan Aykroyd and Kathy Moriarty move next door. Never have so many bad things happened to one man. Seemingly crazy, super aggravating Aykroyd shoots at him. Seductive Moriarty makes it with his wife, Catherine Walker, and that's only the beginning. If you've had crummy and incorrigible neighbors, you'll be able to identify with Belushi's plight. Picture got harsh critical reaction and fans despised it too. But I think this surreal comedy is imaginatively done and perfectly displays the lunacy of the two comics. I also feel affection for the three lead characters who somehow form a mutual admiration society. Aykroyd may destroy Belushi's home life, but he doesn't mean him any harm, and in fact provides him with the first excitement he's had in years, as well as a promising future out of suburbia. I like the way Belushi can never come up with the absolute proof that Aykroyd is doing anything wrong on purpose. There was talk of the two switching roles, as Belushi seemed more appropriately cast as a destructive person, and Aykroyd as the timid victim. But I'm glad they went against type, because both actors are at their absolute best. Moriarty, this is choking me up, this review. Moriarty is also a standout. It's a shame she didn't get screen offers after this. Final Picture is faithful to Thomas Berger's zany satirical novel. I prefer the film's happier ending. Directed by John G. Avildsen, also with Tim Kaczynski and Lauren Marie Taylor.
Now,
what?
Here's the there are the two men who write about film, who I maybe admire the most, had inexplicable soft spots for this movie, and we'll discover the second one a little later on in the show. But let's go to you first, Drew. We often start by asking our guests why they chose their movie from the 1,600 plus titles in Guide. Usually we don't ask it in an accusatory tone, but Drew, why on earth did you choose this movie for our conversation today?
Well, like I said, it was on my mind. It spun up for 80s Roulette, and I knew I needed to be watched. I knew I was going to be watching it anyway. And then when I saw it on your list, I picked it because I genuinely find it fascinating. Mm-hmm. Mike Ovitz was the one that was really pushing Belushi at first for Vic.
Sure.
When Avildsen came looking. Avildsen saw the Blues Brothers, really responded to it, took Larry Gelbart. Larry Gelbart was like, "You're fucking crazy. That's terrible." Did not care for the movie at all. And I think right away, you know that those comic sensibilities are never going to come together. Yeah. And I think Avildsen is the weirdest possible choice for this movie. Mm-hmm. I like Avildsen. I think he's very good at what he does. I really, obviously, Rocky is an all-time, oh my God, over the back wall home run. Yep. I think Joe is a fascinating, grimy little movie. I like Save the Tiger. I think he's done really good work. But if you'll notice, the running thread through all those is they are dramas.
Yeah.
He is not a funny man.
Nope.
And I think there are times where you push a director into a zone they're not comfortable with, and it reveals all the weak spots in what they do. And Avildsen really demonstrates, I would say, an almost total lack of ability to control tone in this movie.
Yeah.
This is a movie that lurches from scene to scene. Yep. There are moments in this movie I really like. And I ultimately do think that casting Aykroyd as Vic works because Aykroyd's giant. And there is an anger and a menace to Aykroyd that very few people tap into.
Yeah.
You know, they cast him a lot as the Wasp, as, you know, after Trading Places, he got put in a very easy comic silo, which is, oh, okay, he's sort of a stiff guy, and then you let him go a little bit crazy and it's fun, and you see what... And there's an Aykroyd character that kind of became his thing in film. This is one of the few times they ever let him go menacing. Yeah. And I am afraid of Dan Aykroyd in this movie. Like, it's a genuine, what is that mutant going to do next vibe that he gives off. And I think that's really compelling. I find it the second most effective casting in the movie. The most effective casting is Kathy Moriarty.
Crushes it.
Who was coming right off Raging Bull. They saw Raging Bull. They were like, her. And this is her second big Hollywood break. And she eats this movie alive. Yeah. In every moment in this movie, she is in charge of whatever scene she's in. And it is the fact that I would not call Kathy Moriarty like a great screen beauty. I think she's a odd... There's a really compelling charisma to Kathy Moriarty. That's not about she's the hottest person in the room. It's about the fact that there's just a knowledge that she is looking at you like she knows what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. And it's that ability to see through somebody that makes her infuriating Raging Bull. You understand why Jake LaMotta feels like he loses every argument, because he does. She very simply starts out smarter than him in any conversation. And in this movie... there is a power that she knows she has the moment she meets Earl, which then she pokes at. And I find that really interesting. She's very good at it in the movie. I know that the casting of Enid, who is Belushi's wife in this movie, was something that was very important to John because that's Doug Kenny's ex-girlfriend. And Doug Kenny was one of the original National Lampoon writers. He was part of that whole sort of Bully Boys comedy world that existed at that time. And Kenny had just died. And it was a dumb, weird, vaguely mysterious death where he fell off a cliff in Hawaii, and it might have been suicide or it might not have been. Nobody really knows. And it hit his friends brutally hard. Like, the people that were close to Kenny were devastated by this. And Catherine Walker was with him at the time. And I think it was important to Belushi to get her working and to get her back into functioning because he saw what it did to her. And so I love that. I think that's a really beautiful thing. I just think she does not have the same comic energy as anybody else in this movie. She's in her own thing.
Yeah, she's a tremendous dramatic actor. And in fact, by sheer weird coincidence, just last week, I watched for the first time Rich Kids. Which had just been sitting on my stack forever. And then as soon as she comes in, I'm like, holy shit. And yeah, she's terrific in that. And it really is. It's almost like a serious version of this character. She's this woman who's sort of trapped in a miserable marriage and trying to get her life together and so forth and so on. But she's way too earnest of an actor for whatever tone this material needed, and certainly Avildsen wasn't going to provide her with it appears.
No, and you know, again, I'm also fascinated by comedies that are trying for a darker tone and struggle with it. Mm-hmm. I think dark comedy is one of those things that's so fiendishly difficult to land.
Definitely.
It's such a small target that you're trying to hit. And when they work, they're like nothing else. It's truly a feeling that is one of a kind. And I know that this must be fascinating to Dan. He has chased this. Obviously, his directorial debut is a movie where he was trying to juggle tones and trying to mix dark and crazy and silly and horrifying, and it does not work at all.
No.
It's crazy. When I was interviewing people for a Ghostbusters book I was writing, I interviewed Dan, and it was a great interview. We had about a 3-hour block of time, and he was enormously generous with stories as long as I was focused on Ghostbusters. And every now and then I would try to find a way to kind of sidestep into another thing. And I noticed Neighbors, he was not afraid of. He would talk about Neighbors. Neighbors was a thing that it was like, you could tell he knew it didn't quite work, but also that it was an experience with John, and that was important to him because there were so few of those. And he really valued what it was and what had come out of it. And I just remember at the very end of my interview with him, I said, by the way, I would really like to follow up with you because I would like to do an oral history at some point of Nothing But Trouble. And I got that far, Nothing But Trouble. And he goes, that would be an enormous waste of your time. And if I were you, I would let that go. I would not be talking about you. I've got to go. And he hung up on me.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, whoa, okay. So there's the line.
There's Dan's third rail, apparently. We found
so, it. Neighbors, fine. Nothing But Trouble, danger. So it was like, you realize, like, for them, they have their own reactions and their own feelings about what did or didn't work.
Sure.
And I think it's interesting that he really stands up for what he thinks Neighbors was trying for.
Right.
I also know that he and John battled Avildsen on this entire movie on how to play things, on what levels to play things at. And I think they directed themselves largely. This is a movie that is very much a clear expression of those two and their comic sensibilities at war with somebody else's comic sensibilities.
Right.
And man, if that's not worth chewing on and revisiting, that's so revealing. It tells you so much about who they are, just watching them push at the boundaries of this movie that they feel like they're kind of trapped in. Yeah. So, and there are so few Belushi movies in general.
There are.
I am of the age where my first memory of Saturday Night Live is sitting on the steps in my house as a little kid, supposed to be in bed, and I'm watching through the banister, and my parents are watching the Julia Child sketch where Dan Aykroyd cuts his thumb and is bleeding everywhere. And both of my parents were howling. Just the sounds that came out of them. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. A, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen on television. B, why are they reacting like that? Yeah. And SNL became this fixation for me. And so it really was a case at first of me reverse engineering. Why do adults laugh at this? What is this show? And then as I did that, I really fell in love with that original cast and with what the show could be. And it became kind of a lifelong obsession for me.
Yeah. So we do always try to sort of ask the personal history. When did you first see it? What were your initial impressions? You hinted at that earlier when you talked about your dad shutting it off, but you did go back and finish it at that time. What did you make of this as a 10, 11-year-old, 12-year-old?
Yeah, I was 11.
Okay.
Yeah, 11 when this came out, and it was on video 5 months later. So it would have been mid 82, early 82 when I saw it. And my take on it then was, because I had read the book. I actually read the book before I saw the movie. And it was a case where the book was just on a stack of my mom's library books. And my parents had a weird standard, which was in my house, movies were carefully negotiated. They would debate movies with me. I would be like Clarence Darrow. I'd have charts and graphs, and I'd be making presentations about why I should see this. And, half the time it would work, and half the time it was like, you're not seeing that. No.
Yeah.
And so it was really just based on whatever whims they had. So this was a case where I knew I wanted to see it desperately as soon as it was announced, because I had read the book, and I in my head started to imagine what that might be. And Thomas Berger's novel is contemptuous of everybody. Thomas Berger's novel is as misanthropic a book as I think I've ever read. And there's one key difference that I think if they had introduced it could have really helped Avildsen, which is in the book, Earl Keys hallucinates. And it's just a thing that he does because he is so bored and so miserable and so locked into his life and feels like it's the same every day and beige. He frequently sees things, and he sees them so vividly that he's not sure if they're real or not. And he sometimes has to ask people, hey, did that happen? And it's set up at the beginning. It allows you so much latitude then for the rest of the movie. If you do that and you really set it up that Earl isn't sure what's real, then Earl's foundation becomes shakier and you can really play with him, and Vic and Ramona can get away with more. It's Harry in the book, not Vic. But I think Vic is the perfect name for the guy that Aykroyd's playing. He's a Vic if I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
And as an adaptation, I've actually, I in order to get ready for this, I did track down Larry Gelbart's original screenplay.
Whoa. Okay.
So I've read the Gelbart. I've read the Gelbart draft now, and here's what I would say.
Okay.
I think he was crying for no reason. I think they shot his movie. I think they largely shot his film. Because there's dialogue in the film that is directly out of the novel, and it's translated directly through Gelbart. He tried to keep these scenes as similar as he could. And when you read the book, you can't help but see the movie if you've seen it, because it is so close. There are so many things that are directly from the book. I think all they did was they tried to dig into their characters a little bit more. I don't think they threw Gelbart's script out the window. There's stuff like the beginning's a little longer, and he shows more of Earl at work to show you how awful it is, and he simmers in the marriage a little bit more before he introduces the neighbors. But otherwise, I think they shot what Gelbart wrote, and I think Gelbart's whole temper tantrum in public is a little bit
CYA.
Don't blame me. Blame. I didn't do it. Well, yes, you did. Yeah, it's his film as much as it's anybody's.
Got it.
But yeah, all of this, just chewing on the book and the script and the everything else. I saw it, like I said, in '82, and even at that point, was still at that point in development where you're trying to articulate why you do or don't like something, or why something does or doesn't quite work for you. And this was a movie that confounded me, because I didn't quite know where to say I landed on it. I felt like, well, there's stuff I like, and I will certainly defend certain things about this, and I can't not watch them when they're on screen together.
Sure.
But yeah, it doesn't land, but it's not terrible. Like, it's the weirdest feeling.
Yeah.
Over time, what has really landed on me is Bill Conti's score is a war crime. It is unconscionable. It is a terrible film score by any standards. And this is the guy that won the Oscar for Rocky working with Avildsen. So, I get why he hired him, but I also think he should have fired him immediately as soon as he heard these tracks. But there was no time. They were jammed into a Christmas release date. That score was written at the last minute after a giant war of stuff that went on, including the original composer, Tom Scott, who was a sax player on SNL and one of Belushi's close friends.
Yeah.
Belushi just sold him out on this movie. And, the account that is in Bob Woodward's Wired is damning. It is a really painful moment for Tom Scott that he never quite got over. And Belushi just wanted him to shrug it off. Like, nah, this is full contact. You just got to get used to it. And, we've heard before that it was Belushi's favorite punk band. He didn't even know who Fear was when he started making this movie. He literally ran into them at a club, saw them perform once, and then it flipped something. And he's like, that's it. That's what the movie needs. And it became this militant drive of his that, no, this is going to be a punk rock movie.
This is kind of addict adjacent behavior to get on that kind of a singular focused tear about something like that.
It couldn't have hurt.
Yeah, it couldn't hurt. I mean, that's the thing is, I don't know if it would have changed anything. I don't know if it would have helped with the attitude of this movie.
Right.
But it is such a broken, strange thing.
Yeah.
And yet, because there are so few Belushi Aykroyd movies,
right, it
is important. It occupies a very specific place in a very tiny canon. And I think if Belushi had not died and Belushi had stayed around and had finally gotten hold of his Hollywood career.
Right.
Which I think he would have. I do think he would have, and I think he would have turned into a dramatic actor as much as anything. Absolutely. I think people would have used him in both. I think this would be a weird speed bump that we talked about. Oh, yeah, remember when they made Neighbors? That was weird, right?
Right.
But because there's only the few films, it looms much larger on the landscape of John Belushi's filmography.
Yeah, yeah. Mike, was this your first time seeing this one?
I'm not even sure I had really heard of this movie before.
Oh wow. Okay.
Like must have heard of it, but it never landed with me. When you were like, "Oh, like Drew picked Neighbors," I was like, "What Cassavetes shit is this? I've never seen."
Right.
I would have watched that version of the movie.
I genuinely didn't know anything. There's no way I've never heard of this movie. Like you said, Belushi's canon is, so short, right? But I had no idea what I was getting into.
Okay, so
now you walking in cold, I'm fascinated by, really fascinated, because it's a weird little relic. So you had no context clues going in.
No, just, what we know about them and their world, but no idea sort of. And I'm just like, Avildsen, that's weird, again, because like, I like Joe, but like, who ever thought this was a good idea? I mean, that's like, I'm always like, whose was this for? Who thought this was a good idea? How did this sort of happen? I'm always curious about that element to it. And these things develop their own momentum. Yep. At some point, like, they've spent enough money, they got to make some back. We're going to finish this thing even if Bruce Lee dies. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where, like, it has its own momentum, and you sort of understand that, but not initially. Not sort of, there's a point anyway. And then Jason sent me your write-up about it. And so all of that is fresh news to me. I don't know anything about that.
I like that you came to it fresh. One of the things I like on the Hip Pocket is that Andrea has not seen a lot of things. And so when we drop them on her, it's always surprising what lands and what doesn't. And, I do think it's a real illustrator of how context matters. For me, I was so soaked in this that, of course, Neighbors stuck to me to some degree.
Yeah.
If you're walking into it fresh at 2026, what a fucking weird movie to experience at any level, man.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. If it would have been scored with fear, it couldn't have hurt. I also don't have like I don't come from movie watching people. Now my parents will watch TCM all the time, and I'm just like, where did this come from? Because they never watched movies when I was a kid. So like, I didn't see the first Saturday Night Lives until I was in my 30s, because whatever. It just sort of wasn't something that like came around. So there's a mythology around all of this stuff too that like I was never asked to participate in. It was never sort of offered to me. So it's easy for me to say, like, I don't really think Dan Aykroyd is that funny. I like listening to him talk about aliens almost more than anything else because he's so into it. It's just wild. But his comic persona is more often than not is just sort of an elevated arrogance. Is sort of an elevated condescension, is the thing that he does just over and over and over. And I don't really find that funny when anybody does it. That's just sort of not my type of humor. So I'm not trying to like say mean things about Dan Aykroyd or whatever. Like, obviously, he's built a whole career. Lots of people think he's funny. I think he was funniest on Saturday Night Live when he was being pushed by people around him, and that elevated arrogance was genuinely put into weird situations and sort of unusual situations. Whereas in this one, it's not actually that weird of a situation. And so the weirdness is on him, and he's not really capable of bringing it. So I think that that's one thing where, like, in a way, I miss out on what's good about a lot of these things because I've never been asked to participate in the mythology of them.
So I had a weird sort of in between these two experiences. I remember when it came out, I was 6, and I mostly remember, I didn't see it then, but my dad was a Belushi super fan.
Nice.
I mean, Mike, you knew my dad. He like sort of even bore a resemblance to Belushi a little bit. Like that was his spirit animal. He loved
That's
Belushi.
His dude, yeah.
To the extent that like I saw Continental Divide in the theater at 6 years old because my dad wanted to see it, and it was rated PG, and who gave a shit if I was going to understand it? Like, that's, when you're a single dad, the babysitter is
cheaper to take you than to get a baby. Yeah, it's
exactly.
How was that nap?
It was great. No, so
yeah.
But he did. There is a similarity, Drew, to what you were saying about the sort of the division between what books I'm allowed to read and what movies I'm allowed to see. And my dad did, until I was 12 or so, took the R rating very seriously. So when this came out, he was like, he did have to hire a babysitter. He said, we're going to go see it without you. Have a good night, da-da-da-da. I go to bed. The next morning I get up and I say, hey, Dad, how was that movie you went to see? And he said, that's the worst piece of shit I've ever seen. Like, he was... furious about that movie. He hated Neighbors, and to the extent that, like, you've known people like this, would take any excuse to bring up for the next 2 years how much he hated Neighbors. So even when I got old enough to where I could rent it, it was always in the back of my brain as my dad said this was the worst piece of shit he'd ever seen. So I didn't see it until 2020.
It must not have seemed that bad. If you've been thinking for 40 years, it's the worst piece of shit ever made.
If you remember, at the beginning of lockdown, a lot of websites had Blu-ray sales because they knew we were all going to be stuck in for a while. And a lot of us who knew we weren't going to be spending money going out for a while partook of those. And I can't remember how, I got a hold of it for like $5. I'm like, for $5, I'll finally watch Neighbors. And I watched it. And this was only the second time I'd seen it, but 2 minutes in, it all flooded back to me. The biggest mistake, the thing I hate the most about this movie, Drew, is that war crime of a score. That score is so pushy and sweaty and annoying, and the way that it underlines every single fucking joke or moment or mood or change in tone. I mean, like, there's a wolf slide whistle when she takes her towel off. A wolf slide, there's a waka waka trumpet in this score after her line about spanking his buns.
Carl Stallings' work is subtle and quiet compared to what is being done here. Like,
holy shit.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is the only case I can think of where I feel like someone's Oscar should be rescinded. They should have taken back Conti's Rocky Oscar to atone for this score. And I know that fairly recently they did a CD release of the score, and I can't imagine that'd be like owning the videotape in the Ring, but they apparently also included Tom Scott's original cues. And
that I'd be curious to hear.
I would be curious to hear that as well. I have not heard it, but I'm curious. Tom Scott also had a weird history with getting his scores replaced, because I had a friend with an original Fletch poster that had music by Tom Scott, and I don't know if he did a bad score, if they just wanted the Beverly Hills Cop juice.
I think that was very much a case of post Beverly Hills Cop that push was made. Oh, this is the guy now. This is the guy who does this.
Yeah, and we want that audience to come see Fletch and to so do another Axel F for us, Harold Faltermeyer. Anyway, so that sort of overshadowed everything about the fucking thing. But I did come away, number one, I agree with, and you get into this more in the newsletter, that Belushi is miscast.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating to see him miscast. It does hint at a range that I think is also present in Continental Divide of what he was capable of, what he could have cultivated, and sort of where he might have gone through the 80s and 90s as an actor. My question to you, Drew, is, and Mike, would this movie have played better or differently in a better way with Belushi and Aykroyd in the opposite roles?
I think it might have been more of a conventional hit. I think the audience was primed at that point to expect Belushi to explode.
Sure.
And they had just been really frustrated by Continental Divide, where he doesn't.
Right.
And there's another movie where you can feel them trying to figure out, can we push him into a different mold? Can we make him this guy?
Yep.
And that is always such a weird mistake to make with a new movie star. Why did they become a movie star? What did the audience react to?
Right.
Don't be afraid of that thing, and don't run from it. And I feel like Belushi's management, and it's Mike Ovitz is largely responsible for this, Mike Ovitz was very much pushing John to become a leading man in a conventional way. And so I think there was a push from Ovitz to stretch yourself and do these things. But there was also a real sense of it's momentum. We've got to cash in as quickly as we can. And there's a famous story that Belushi, while they were in the middle of making this, Belushi was brought into Paramount, and they had a deal with him already in place, and they had told him that they were going to put him on Joy of Sex, which at that point was going to be a Penny Marshall anthology comedy of different segments that related back to the nonfiction Joy of Sex book that had come out, and they wanted Belushi to play a baby. And they told him he'd be in a diaper and everything. Sure. And I truly think that costume fitting, that conversation that they had, broke him on some level. I think there was, by all accounts, he was inconsolable after that. Is this how Hollywood sees me? Is this what I'm going to be doing? I'm going to be in a diaper, and it's here's the fat guy in a diaper. Like, I don't think I can do that. And I think some of this movie, there's a defeat that has landed on Belushi that unfortunately reads. And I think if he had been playing Vic, it would have been just one more step in the already building ladder that they had, where it was like, okay, of course he's Vic because he was Bluto. Like, that makes sense. He's that guy. It may have made more money. I don't know that it would have worked any better as a film. And I think Aykroyd would have been hamstrung by the role of Earl. Yeah. There is not as much, because Aykroyd is at heart a weirdo. He presents as normal, somewhat. And part of what was fun was him as a spokesman or as a really surface normal character with a cauldron of weird bubbling just underneath. Exactly. And I think Vic is a good chance for him to express a larger comic palette than he'd already shown. And so I feel like it would have not worked at all for him. And then I don't know that Belushi would have necessarily delivered the goods, because I don't think the script is set up to do that. I think he would have bumped up against Avildsen anyway, even if he was playing the more conventional casting choice. So I think as much as the conventional wisdom is they should have flipped, I don't know if it benefits the film really, and I still think you've got the Avildsen problem in charge. Like, he just doesn't get comedy.
And if you've got Avildsen in charge, you still got that Bill Conti score, which again cannot describe any better than a war crime. Okay, let's take a quick break, and then we will talk about the movie's release and reception. Friends, let's talk about the release and reception of Neighbors, which opened wide on December 18th, 1981. In fact, it opened a bit wider than usual as Columbia Pictures looked at the test screening results and calculated that they needed to make as much money as possible, as quickly as possible, before negative word of mouth got around. Also opening that weekend, and this is a good weekend, Absence of Malice.
It was wild, yeah.
Pennies from Heaven, Ghost Story, Four Friends, and Sharky's Machine, plus a big Disney re-release of Cinderella.
Also Heartbeeps was that day.
Oh my God! How could I have?
Yeah,
how could I have
Heartbeeps
forgotten?
was also that day. Another
big day for
disaster.
Big day for really ill-conceived comedies. Also playing in theaters in New York City that day, They All Laughed, Whose Life Is It Anyway, Rollover, Ragtime, Reds, Buddy Buddy, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Time Bandits, True Confessions, Taps, On Golden Pawn, Arthur, The French Lieutenant's Woman, Chariots of Fire, and Ticket to Heaven. So not a bad weekend to go to the moving pictures. Mike, what were the news headlines?
Dude, I'm going to be walking around thinking about this goddamn movie all week. Like, this is the difference between the 70s and the 90s. Adam Sandler made 10 movies before he tried to go do something different. Because, like, in the 90s, like, you bought your mom a house before you went trying to be an artist. Yeah. Like, you're talking about a junkie whose favorite band is Fear. And now you're trying to, like, squeeze him into this thing. The 70s just weren't that era, bro. Like, it just... Yeah. I'm going to be thinking about this all week. This is amazing. All right. What were we doing here? What a
headlines.
Movie. Like, when you spend 10 times the amount of time it took to watch a movie thinking about it, that's really like... Whew. Yeah. Okay. Oh, right. Headlines.
Yes.
December 18th, 1981 was Keith Richards' 38th birthday. It's like kind of hard to remember that he was in his 30s. ever, right?
Speaking of junkies,
is the old man still making rock and roll?
It's like you think, like, you know, he was in his 20s, but like, what is 38-year-old Keith Richards doing? All right, anyway. The news was mostly dominated by the imposition of martial law in Poland a few days before. By December 18th, people were being killed for protesting their Soviet-aligned government. So there was a lot of that going on because their whole thing was crumbling at the base, bro. So shoot all the protesters you want. Doesn't give you a useful economic situation. In TV news, there's a brief story about rock and roll artists appearing on TV, including David Bowie.
Okay.
The New York Times tells us that WNYC Channel 31 is presenting a half-hour program titled David Bowie Plus 5. Okay, now, you might think that he's got 5 guests or something. I don't know, whatever. They go on to explain, quote, Mr. Bowie is the rock performer who distinguished himself on Broadway last year as a replacement in the title role of the Elephant Man. The 5 refers to videotapes made as visual, quote, adaptations, unquote, of his songs. For the most part, Mr. Bowie explains, the tape attempts to develop a counter storyline with the same weight as the song. In other words, the translations are not literal, unquote.
Early music videos, like
1981. The New York Times is trying to explain MTV and doing a really shitty job of it. Actually, in my opinion,
I read that and my first thought is it'll never work.
It's lead balloon, buddy, lead balloon. And finally, it has been a while since we had a good Nazi story on this show. Hey-yo! December 18th, 1981, Mr. Albert Deutscher, 61 years old, former member of the Schelpstuss. I don't know how to pronounce it because I don't bother myself with pronouncing Nazi shit, right? Fuck those guys. They were a paramilitary group that carried out mass murder of hundreds of Jewish civilians in Ukraine. Deutscher moved to the U.S. In the 50s. He lied about his activities and became a naturalized citizen in 1957. He then went on to work for the railroad in Cicero, Illinois for the next almost 30 years. And then the Justice Department figured out who he was. So when the Justice Department figured out who he was, they filed a petition to revoke his citizenship, which allows them to send him back to Germany. And you know what they were doing with Nazis, like, you know, out and out Nazis in the 80s. Yeah, at least the ones that were sent back by America were getting in trouble. The day after the petition was filed to revoke his citizenship, Mr. Deutscher was killed by a train. So
a feel-good story.
Wow.
Really.
A feel-good story. That's exactly correct. And I read it. The New York Times just says he was killed by a train. And I was like, that's kind of weird the day after. Let's do a little bit of investigative
What a wild
research.
Coincidence that it happened.
Let's look around. Turns out he had worked for Burlington Northern for 30 years. And according to the UPI, quote, it was unlikely a veteran railroad employee would run between the rails and get in the way of a train accidentally, a Burlington Northern spokesman said before the medical examiner's ruling. So it sounds like Mr. Deutscher decided to jump in front of a speeding train, and I salute his choice. And I suggest
First good one he made. First good one he made his entire life,
Follow your leader, you Nazi scumbag fucks. Follow your leader. That's the news.
I just realized when you're talking about the releases that came out this weekend, talking about my dad and how weird his ratings thing was, I saw Sharky's Machine in the theater. If you've seen Sharky's Machine,
sure have.
That shit is fucking crazy. That is a wild R-rated movie. But Neighbors was too much. Neighbors was. I noticed that my dad was a real hypocrite when it came to Clint Eastwood or Burt Reynolds. I saw Tightrope with my dad in the theater. You want to talk about an uncomfortable viewing experience. Dad, you shouldn't be watching this. I know I shouldn't be watching this. Oh, my God.
Oh, what are the McWeenies up to this weekend? Well, Dad's taking Drew to see another movie about whores.
God.
Jason, what did the critics say about Neighbors?
Most did not care much for it. The New York Times' Janet Maslin enjoyed Belushi and Aykroyd, but wrote, quote, "Though the movie isn't particularly funny, it's jaunty at any cost. Bill Conti's score combines touches of Home Sweet Home, the Laurel and Hardy and Twilight Zone themes, and standard The Indians Are Circling Around the Wagons movie music. Yet the material revolves around something serious, or at least it ought to. Mr. Avildsen can neither find any sense in the threat posed to Earl, nor, as Mr. Berger did, relish its absurdity," end quote. It's pretty accurate. Harsher words from Newsweek's David Anson, who opined, quote, "Thomas Berger's paranoid comic novel could have been made a fascinating movie in the hands of, say, Roman Polanski, who knows how to make a comedy of menace. John G. Avildsen, Rocky, doesn't have a clue. You can't twist reality if you can't establish a reality to twist. Belushi and Aykroyd obviously got cast because they're bankable, but no one seems to have asked if they were appropriate. The parts demand subtle comic acting, they do TV turns. Just how much blame falls on Larry Gelbart's disjointed script is hard to say. Avildsen could make any writer look bad. But without question, here we go, Bill Conti has come up with the year's most offensive score. A cattle prod of cartoonish cuteness that only underlines the movie's desperate uncertainty of tone. The ads for Neighbors call it a comic nightmare. It's more like a sour case of creative indigestion," end quote.
Jesus.
But
Nice.
here's my reference earlier. Told you I'd bring it back. Roger Ebert, surprisingly enough, gave it 3 out of 4 stars. The same rating he gave that year's Time Bandits, for the sake of comparison, and wrote, quote, "The movie operates as a satire of social expectations, using polite cliches as counterpoint to deadly insults, all delivered in pleasant conversational tones. The first hour of Neighbors is probably more fun than the second, if only because the plot developments come as a series of surprises. After a while, the bizarre logic of the movie becomes more predictable. But Neighbors is a truly interesting comedy, an offbeat experiment in hallucinatory black humor. It grows on you," end quotes. And I think Drew would at least agree that it is a truly interesting comedy, but perhaps not in the same glowing terms.
It's so funny when Roger would go to bat for stuff, and or when he would recoil completely. And this is a case of I do feel a little defensive about Neighbors sometimes when you talk to people about it, because I don't think it's worthless. I think it is a misbegotten thing. Yep. But it is never not interesting. And like you said, Mike, you're going to be thinking about it all week, man. It's in your head now. Neighbors lives with you. That's permanent. So, there are bad movies that bounce off me that I never think about again.
Right.
What I always find interesting with Ebert is when a movie like this gets under his skin and he can't stop chewing on it or thinking about it. I know that Fight Club he hated, and that's how I met him, was he emailed me to taunt me about my review. And he was like, "You're so wrong. You're so wrong." And, but it was clear the next time I saw him in person that he had spent the entire time between chewing on it and thinking about it and rewatching it. And he was like, "Maybe you're kind of right, but you're still kind of wrong." And so I love that he's very much like us. Like once something goes in and it's chewing on, that's worthwhile to him. I think the worst films are the ones that we never think about twice.
Exactly. Well said. How did it do in terms of box office and awards, Mike?
Well, Columbia's strategy worked. Neighbors opened in first place and dropped quickly. But it ultimately grossed $29 million in its initial run, a healthy return on its $8.5 million budget. It was in second-run houses when Belushi died of a drug overdose less than 3 months later. Columbia rather ghoulishly re-released the film for midnight weekend showings in early April 1982. Why are you impugning their motives, Jason? They were celebrating him with this movie.
I'm sure. With his finest work, really.
In terms of awards, it was up for 2 stinker awards. But if you'd like to know how credible that organization is, Neighbors lost the Most Painfully Unfunny Comedy Award to History of the World Part 1. And even more egregiously, it lost the Most Intrusive Musical Score Award to Tangerine Dream for Thief. Fuck that.
Fuck that. Fuck them. What the fuck? Now it's time for a segment.
Crazy.
Yeah. Now it's time for a segment we call Double It Up, where we each select one movie that we think would make an ideal double feature with today's focal film. Drew, you're our guest, which means you go first.
A double feature with Neighbors. This is so tricky, and I really, since you asked, I would go in the direction of Fascinating Train Wrecks.
Okay.
I don't think you put a good movie next to Neighbors, because then, like a great movie next to Neighbors, because then Neighbors does suffer by comparison. Mm-hmm. I think if you're going to do this, I think the next movie you watch is, as I mentioned earlier, Nothing But Trouble.
Excellent.
Where I think it is Aykroyd truly off the leash. It is
absolutely.
the most it's the best look we've ever gotten at the interior landscape of what Dan Aykroyd's head is like. And you realize, oh my God, it's terrifying in there.
Yes.
But it's because when you read about him, he is, I don't know if he's on the spectrum. I don't know if he's just obsessed with stuff, but he has his fascinations. He has his things that he is totally overwhelmed by. One of those is his police badge collection, which is legendary. We all know about the UFOs. The UFOs are not a secret anymore. The police badges is still one of the weirder ones, where he has thousands of police badges from around the world. And I love that there's a scene in this movie where you just see his police badge collection. And it's like, I'm sure there's a narrative reason for it, but I also feel like Dan's like, I'm just going to put my police badge collection in because I got it. Yeah. I love that. I love that movie is very much a look inside Dan Aykroyd. And maybe the reason he will not talk about it is because of the way the public completely rejected it. And it's like, oh, well, that hurt. Okay, I'm going to close this back up and never talk about it again. I let you guys in too far. Oops.
Yeah.
And, but again, once you see Nothing But Trouble, A, you never forget you saw it.
Do not.
And B, you never stop thinking about it. Like, there's times it'll be the middle of the night, and I think about the Digital Underground scene, and that's in a movie.
It is.
That happened. They pointed cameras at that, and they all went, "Yep, that's going in." Amazing. So yeah,
it's in the same movie as the giant wet baby twins. Like, that all happens in the same fucking thing.
And they are both abrasive. Like, I am fascinated by comedies that try to be abrasive, that want to just rub your nose and unpleasant, because that's another really tricky thing to do. Yeah. And boy, Dan fails completely with Nothing But Trouble. And it's so unpleasant and so aesthetically, you don't want to touch that movie.
Oh, it's
you
ugly.
don't want to smell that movie. It's so, and I feel like Neighbors is the same way. I don't want to know what their cul-de-sac smells like. No. If they're that close to a swamp and power lines and everything, no, thank you. Yeah. Gross. And so I feel like those are in conversation with each other. Put that on. And then I'm sorry. I apologize.
There you go. And then enjoy your nightmares. And
yes.
My pick, okay, I did decide to go with a good movie, but a movie that would maybe question one of the takeaways of this movie, which is we all are very much in agreement that Avildsen cannot do comedy, or at least cannot do this kind of comedy. But in 1987, he released, and I may be misremembering this, and you know this kind of stuff much better than I do, maybe even kind of barely released, if I recall correctly, a movie called Happy New Year, which is a sparkling sort of heist comedy with Peter Falk in the lead, Charles Durning as his sort of second banana, and it is totally charming. It is sweet and funny. It's well paced. He does everything right in that movie that he does wrong in this one. I'm not saying it is a great comedy. I'm not saying it's this sort of one of the lost gems of the 80s or whatever, but it is a perfectly enjoyable little programmer with a terrific Peter Falk performance. A great, like, Charles Durning was so in his pocket of just like stealing movies by the handful right around then. I was really, really pleased and charmed and surprised by Happy New Year. So I feel like it's light and pleasant enough that it might lift your spirits a little bit on the heels of Neighbors.
And when you say barely released, you're not wrong. It barely came out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is. I saw it on. There was a Blu-ray set that came out a couple of years ago of Peter Falk movies, and it is. I think the best one in that bunch. It's just it's a really sweet, charming, light, funny, good little John Avildsen movie, and so that I think is sort of the best you could hope for after that. Mike, what is your pick?
You ever heard the phrase "the only way out is through"?
Yes.
I use this as an excuse to watch 1941 because
oh wow, okay.
That was one that I hadn't seen or I hadn't even heard of also until maybe 4 or 5 years ago. More recently, obviously, than this one. But I don't even remember how I got to it. But I remember seeing it and I was just like, what is this? Has to be. How have I never heard of this? Like everybody, this is the most famous shit. Like this, this is between Jaws and E.T. and I've never even heard of it. Like this is completely absurd. And of course, you spend 5 to 10 seconds, you allow yourself thinking you've discovered some gem that everyone forgot about. And then after 5 to 10 seconds, before you can even hit play, you realize, no, this movie has to be unbelievably bad. Like this movie, like that I've never. It's not that people aren't aware of this movie. There's people searching, hunting. There's people delving for diamonds in these particular fields for a long time. So anyway, I finally put it on. And part of it was to try to figure out, like, you know, these questions of switching up the casting, whatever like that. And it's really, really bad. Yeah. And it's full of, I mean, it's really like the sort of what would be known as this, like, or what we would all see like the Spielberg set pieces, the sort of Indiana Jones shit where there's just like a cast of 1,000 extras, you know, and there's a guy riding around on a fire truck ladder, swinging and flying through windows and all that thing that he does so well. And it is boring. There's not a funny moment in the entire thing. He manages to have a bunch of Japanese people but it doesn't feel racist.
It's okay because it's incredibly loud though. At least it's clanging in your ears for 2+ hours. At least it's that. It's hard to understand how such a talented group of people can make something so terrible. And like watching all of the Ned Beatty stuff really sort of like paired nicely with Neighbors, sort of seeing them back to back. It's like this other sort of suburban thing, you know. Anyway, I don't like switching the roles in Neighbors would have been interesting because Belushi has, I think, a lot more. I would have enjoyed it more, I think, if on their initial presentation it seemed like Aykroyd was a normal guy, and then he gets weird. Like Drew mentioned, you know, he was really good at being normal on the front, and then you find out he's weird. Neighbors could have been better if they would have done that. If they would have actually switched roles, it could have worked better because Belushi has more of an undercurrent of threat. You know, like Belushi he'll do that thing where he'll get right in your face and like, you know, you sort of are like, but he's saying something totally normal, but like you can read the threat in a way that. But
there's he's a little scrapper. You know, he's a fighter. You know, he's dangerous. He's fight dirty. Like,
in a way that Aykroyd just doesn't sort of feel dangerous. But ultimately, the director is the problem here. And has Spielberg even tried to make another comedy?
The crazy thing is he's a funny filmmaker within scenes, but overall comedy is something that I think is harder to maintain a tone on and not his particular wheelhouse.
I just find his movies bloodless. I just don't, you know, I have an enormous amount of respect for him, obviously, sort of as a technician. Obviously, we all sort of know what he does, but I just find his movies bloodless. I don't particularly enjoy them. And I think that what comedy, like a lot of times what works with comedy is like, it's got to be full of blood. You know what I mean? Like it's those very human things that makes comedy. And I don't think that he understands that You know, I don't think that, and I especially don't think that he understands sort of how to portray that. But more than anything else, he just likes big, swoopy things with dinosaurs. He just likes. And that's what he's the best at, and he's better than anybody else at it. But it's choreography. It's not
it's
comedy.
With a toy set. Yeah,
it's choreography.
Drew, you're getting it. You're getting it. Mike and I have known each other since we're 15 and 16, and this is our longest running argument. This argument over Spielberg and the bloodlessness of it, if you will. The thing I will say, I think he eventually acquired at least a light comic touch that is woefully missing in 1941 and needed. And I think the best example of that is probably Catch Me If You Can, which, while it is not a comedy, it's mostly comic, and I think he carries it off beautifully. But I think I think you are right in that at these points in their careers, these were two filmmakers who did not have that comedy quality sort of at their immediate fingertips and really struggled with it.
I also think this is worth noting that Spielberg is legendarily a guy who's obsessed with Saturday Night Live. He's, he lives in New York now. He goes to tapings all the time. If you talk to anybody who works on the show, they talk about that moment where they're at a monitor and they turn and they suddenly realize, oh shit, that's Steven Spielberg. And he's just right there. That's been since the 70s. He is fascinated by the idea that they have to build and put on this show every week, and that they managed to do the set changes and the costume changes and the energy of it fascinates him. I think both Avildsen and Spielberg, and this is why I like your double feature, Mike, I think they were both driven a little crazy by seeing SNL in that early thing. I think they both were like, oh, how I want in. I want to do that. Please, I want that. And neither of them was terribly suited for it. Right. But you can see them wanting to be part of it, wanting to crack the code. That looks great. I want to be part of that. Knowing that Avildsen went to Blues Brothers and walked out of it having had a religious experience. Right. I get it. I get why he was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to work with those two guys. I want to be in the middle of that chaos and that. And then when he got there and they brought the chaos and he realized, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And this is not fun. And I'm not having fun with these guys and they hate me. Oh shit. Yeah. Had to be really a terrible moment for him as a filmmaker. I think Spielberg really thought he had the train set under control until he put it out in theaters and then went, oh, okay. Yeah. I thought that worked. Okay, maybe not.
Neither of those guys are improv directors. Like, the idea of Cassavetes making Neighbors, he would have let them work. You know what I mean? He would have let them just rewrite whole
much darker. It would have been
it would have been darker. It would have been weirder. But he would have let them just be and be comedians and do and Avildsen didn't write. I mean, as far as I know, he was like a by the book guy. And I don't know this about him, but I don't think of Spielberg's train sets functioning through improv.
He's not a riffer.
You got to hit your fucking mark, and you need to say your line at the pace you said it last time because we got to bring this dinosaur over around the corner. You know what I mean? So, and I think that's with those guys especially, and at that time, and that relates to the Adam Sandler comment I made earlier. All these people in the late 70s thought of themselves as artists, bro. They did not think of themselves, and of course they are trying to work their way into this sort of large thing, but they thought of themselves as trying to change it. They thought of themselves as trying to bring that sort of revolutionary Lenny Bruce spirit to the thing. And I don't think Sandler was trying to do any of that shit. Right. I think that's one's not necessarily better than the other. It's just one doesn't really mesh very well with Steven Spielberg. But if you watch these movies together, if you settle yourself in for just to have that kind of day, I think actually 1941 was an amazing thing to watch after Neighbors.
There you go. All right, Drew, where can people follow you on social media and read your work?
I am DrewMcWeeny.com on Blue Sky. I'm Drew McWeeny on Letterboxd, which is the only good social media platform. I am DrewMcWeeny.com is where you can find both of the newsletters. I've tried to streamline it. I think I'm fairly easy to find at this point. And and the Hip Pocket, which is available anywhere you can get podcasts. Please check that one out.
Yeah. Good show. Good fucking show. I am Jason-Bailey on Blue Sky and Letterboxd. Mike, where can people find you?
Michael Hull on Letterboxd.
If you like the show and think other people might like it too, please do leave us a rating and or review on your podcatcher of choice. If you'd like to join the mailing list, get weekly show notes, get links to Drew's newsletters, etc., you can do that at buttondown.email/filmfanatic. And if you're one of these inexplicable people who likes to watch people talking into microphones while they make a podcast, hello, you can find us on YouTube. Our channel is Guide for the Film Fanatic.
Our humblest thanks to our guiding light, Mr. Danny Perry, author of Guide for the Film Fanatic, and shout out to executive producer Blake Howard, who assures us that it always shrivels up like that when he showers.
Thank you again, Drew.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Jason.
And thank you for listening. On the next Guide for the Film Fanatic, Dan Mecca of the Film Stage and the B-Side podcast joins us to discuss the 1938 Technicolor swashbuckler, The Adventures of Robin Hood. See you then.